Welcome to Bridging Success, the podcast where top B2B CEOs and executives share their insights, challenges, and game-changing strategies that drive innovation and business growth. I'm your host, Bo Jakins, founder and CEO of BridgeNet Technology Consultants. Each episode, we spotlight visionary leaders shaping the future, diving into critical decisions, leadership philosophies, and breakthrough moments that have propelled them to success. On this episode, I'm joined by Kurt Gerwitz. Kurt owns Gerwitz Consulting, where he focuses on his role as a professional public speaker, and fractional CFO. Kurt's passion is the transformative power of financial education. Kurt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Good to be here.
Absolutely. You said one of your biggest challenges was mindset, and you mentioned your lack of affection for marketing. What tools and techniques are you using to automate your own marketing efforts these days?
I'm at the early stages of this adventure. I just started looking at hunter.ai or .io. I forget which one it is. Actually, it's a Chrome extension. And when I go to a website for an event that will be lucky to hire me in the future, I use that to just scrape the email addresses off of everything in that website. And it gives me a good list. It feels old fashioned the way I'm doing this, but Bo, I went through your list I've listened to all of your podcasts, the past six before me. So I think I'm lucky number seven, maybe, or maybe there's one in the pipeline between us. But you had the guy on Mitchell who was talking about authenticity. My marketing outreach is very authentic. I am manually sending out emails. Perhaps it's time consuming. It's relatively automated. I've got to copy and paste I'm currently actually only just using a Gmail account because we're, like I said, early stages in this. But I'm diving in. I'm looking forward to learning what AI can do for me for marketing. I feel like I'm supposed to be on all the socials and become an influencer. And so I'm headed down the path and I'm learning along the way. It's a lot of fun.
We're launching some of those efforts right here. So I may have jumped ahead of myself. Tell us about how you got to this passion of financial education and how you started focusing on this career as a fractional CFO. What brought you up to want to be a professional public speaker? Tell us a little background there.
Yeah, your earlier guest page in episode 3, she mentions the very frequent winding path to get where you're going. And so my path maybe in high school and college, and then I was teaching high school in New Orleans there and teaching Spanish and teaching religion. And I decided to join the Jesuit Order of Catholic Priests. So I think I just wanted to be on stage. When I was a student in class, I wanted to be the teacher. When I was a participant in a Catholic mass, I wanted to be the preacher. And so now I've finally leaned into that. I have been teaching college here for, let me do the math, 14 years. I've been teaching at the college level after 5 years teaching at the lower school level. And so I'm a ham. I've got a little bit of a short man complex, and I like to be the center of attention. I like to look and feel smart, but mostly I like to be useful. It's when they say teachers get addicted to when you experience one of your students having that light bulb moment and they see something in a different light and they're changed forever. They're transformed by that. After I was in the priesthood and I worked in some more schools after that in the nonprofits in my 20s, I came out of that and said, I'll never work for another nonprofit. That was in my 20s. And then in my 30s, after I got my MBA in finance from Tulane University, I worked for a bank for 7 years. And I said, I'll never work for another publicly traded company because of their short-term incentives to answer to the investors every 3 months. And so now I'm private or die, and there's a wide variety of cultures in private companies. And when I discovered finance and economics at the MBA program, with the common thread to my passion for religion and history and culture is that I'm seeking truth. I want to know how the world works. And when I realized that people make these economic decisions and they make them with finance, by what I mean by finance is what the numbers they see in front of them is how they make decisions. I was like, oh, this is how the world really works. Holy cow. And then I've been teaching finance at the college level for 13 years. And I said, I want to get more practical experience. I was working at the bank and I was working in foreign exchange. We moved from New Orleans here to Denver, Colorado, and I got the chance to work with a guy. He's got a great story. He had a profitable company that went bankrupt. So how does a profitable company go bankrupt? But you have to know the difference between profit and cash flow. And so in his story, he, in his much later adult life, had to go learn financial concepts. And so he and I were a good partnership. And yes, so I find that this is when I sit back in the moment of silence or at the foot of my bed and say, what am I here to do? What's my ikigai? Meaning, what does the world need? What am I good at? And what do I enjoy doing? What's the overlap in that Venn diagram? It's what you introduced me as with the transformative power of financial education.
Great. Good backstory there. Full disclosure, you and I go way back from your days in New Orleans and the New Orleans Leadership Institute. I'm familiar with some of the projects you were involved in back then, but tell us about some of the achievements or projects that you've worked on maybe during that time or more recent that you're most proud of that have the most impact on the consulting career that you've developed so far.
Yeah, the one that jumps out at me was the Project Homecoming, which it was a nonprofit and it's defunct now, but it was in that wave of dollars that flooded into New Orleans after the Katrina flood. And we were helping people get back into homes and we were doing it correctly. And it was a great nonprofit. And there was someone on the board there, Mary Alexander, and I was surprised. This is how small town New Orleans is. She and I were on the board there, and then she and I and you were in the same class with that the New Orleans Regional Leadership Institute, which I've got that glass trophy, the attendance trophy on my shelf right behind me here. Yeah, so we were doing good work and I was on the finance committee and I eventually rose the ranks of the nonprofit to become president of that institution. And we had another natural disaster that caused a failure in that institution, which was a tornado that had come through New Orleans, as rare as that is. It did, and it wiped out our revenue source where we had all these volunteers coming into New Orleans to help rebuild, and they would pay us to do so. It sounds like a great business model until you have to work with volunteers and you realize that it's better just sometimes just pay a skilled professional to get the job done. We went to so we merged with another nonprofit, and so I've that was my intro into mergers and acquisitions. And I was working at a bank at the time, and I was at that nonprofit. I was getting promoted at the nonprofit, and the promotions in the financial world were coming much slower in New Orleans. And so that might be the big one you're thinking of. I was also involved with the leadership. What was it called? The YLC. Every town has a place for young professionals, and in New Orleans, it was YLC. Other places, it can be a different organization. I've learned the hard way by moving here and living here and meeting people, and they've never heard of these things that regionally are so important to us in New Orleans. Yeah, so let's see. I was doing a little too much when I did move to Denver. I said I'm not gonna do so much. I was teaching at Tulane University down there. I did pick up. I actually upgraded my what I teach here in Denver is a more interesting subject to me, at least as the professor, than just intro to finance. Now I'm teaching startup finance at one university, DU, the University of Denver, and I'm teaching the what I humbly call the best finance class in all of Colorado over at Regis University. It's very similar to the Birkenroad program. It's a younger cousin to people who might know the New Orleans Tulane program there, where we're teaching financial analysts, meaning that we're teaching our students to go look at publicly traded companies and analyze them. And so I started teaching that here at Regis. We called it Anderson Reports because the business school is called the Anderson College. And it's really good. We've covered 5 companies. My favorite that I could say we covered was Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. But I'm teaching these students these essential financial skills. And one of the things they say in education, one of the best things you can do as a teacher is set up an expectation failure. So I'll ask the students a question and they give me an answer and sometimes they're trying to fake confidence or something, but But the answer is just, they're just wildly wrong, right? It's okay. This is how we learn. And I find that's incredibly useful with my client. That sort of perspective is incredibly useful with my clients as we have ideas about what we're going to do, what we want to do, but we've got to look at the financials and project it out forward. And the transformative piece is how the definition of finance is that we transcribe or translate risk, dollars, and time between each other. And so people looking at a financial projection and understanding the assumptions. And then for the personal level, it's building that, looking through the future months builds a relationship with your future self. Sometimes I'll have my personal finance clients, I'll have them look at a picture of themselves when they're 60 years old, or let's say ten years from now, 20 years from now. There's those apps, those AI apps where they age your face. And it's been proven, there's a study that shows that this will help you connect, build a relationship with your future self so that today's spending should not just be consumption, but it should be investment. And you can really help somebody avoid problems or, as it turns out, get out of problems with financial thinking.
So you mentioned a lot of finance stuff there, but you left off the stint in improv. Tell me how the improv. I loved coming to see you on the stage at that improv theater you were at, but tell us how that's made an impact on your public speaking career.
It certainly has given me confidence. I have been a mystic since I was 16. That was part of that story of me joining the Catholic Order of Priests. And I've done a lot of weird stuff. I did a 30-day silent retreat. I lived in a homeless shelter during that time as well as a volunteer. I've skydived. I currently, a week from tomorrow, I'm climbing another 14 mountain over 14,000 feet here. I've tried psychedelic medicine. I've been in therapy since I was 12 years old. And of all these things, the thing that was most impactful and positive return for me was exactly that improv class. I've signed up. It came at me as a challenge. There was a very conservative friend of mine. He was president of the Young Republicans. He's not that way anymore. That's a whole nother. I'm curious about how his politics has changed. It's very interesting, but that's not today's story. He's Kurt, you got to go do improv. And I said, boy, that's not me. I'm a finance guy. I'm a business guy. Like I wear a suit to work. And he just wouldn't let up. And then my therapist said, "Oh yeah, you're thinking about improv. There's these," and he starts going through these theories, all this academic or intellectual theories on why improv is good for the mental health. And then what tipped it over for me, besides I bought it at a discount, right? Because I'm good with money, so I got a discount. But I ran into somebody on the street, and he had been on stage. And I thought to myself, I want to introduce him. I want to introduce myself to him. This is the thing I like to do. I like to connect with people. And but I know that not everyone's like that. But I knew he was strong. He had an aura about him. I said to myself, if he could have been on stage pretending to be a pterodactyl while somebody threw pretend bananas at him, he can handle a gentleman on the street wearing a suit and tie to come up to him and say, "Hey, I saw your show and I enjoyed it and I'd like to meet you." And so I realized in that moment, I want what he has. I want that superpower of being approachable as well as being fun and more lighthearted, of course. That's really where it kicks in. So I signed up for this program. I'm in 5 weeks, and we are on a Wednesday night. At the end of 5 weeks, we are the show. So we spend 5 weeks, and it's transformative, mostly because you're around a teacher who uses what he calls his kindergarten voice. He's got to get adults to be comfortable on stage. That's a very difficult thing. I think he went 5 weeks without saying one negative word, and that's transformative. And just to know it's even possible. And he did a great job with it. He would just only find the positives, circle that, and push it forward. And that was great. That's how I want to be in my life going forward now. So that Wednesday, we spend the whole 5 weeks just nervous that this one big show is coming up. And Bo, I don't know if you knew my defense mechanism, my psychological defense mechanism technique was I only sent out that invite to that show like 3 hours before the show. So everybody had an excuse not to come. Oh, I didn't see your post. And so I just it was and look, I would do it differently now. Here's why. It's because at the end of that show, they said to me, "Hey Kurt, are you going to do level 2?" I said, "Oh my God, what? There's a level two? You got to be kidding me." So of course, I signed up, and you form a little bit of a community as you go through it, but there's 5 levels. So by the time you're on the fifth level, the fifth set of 5 weeks, you are the show every Wednesday. So instead of me being scared of one Wednesday that for 5 weeks and hiding it from my people and my friends and my community, and I did the opposite by the time I was at the end of this program. And I just would run into people and say, "Hey, come see me any Wednesday. Come see me next Wednesday. If you can't make next Wednesday, it's the Wednesday after that." I'm always on stage. So to see an adult go through that kind of transformation, that kind of progress, that kind of growth, but really also the proof is in the pudding. You ask my wife if I'm funnier, or or let me rephrase that, if I'm more lighthearted, if I'm more relaxed, if I don't take myself too seriously anymore. It helped my personality a lot. I genuinely went in to improv thinking I'd be embarrassed if my mommy issues came out on stage. And by the time I left that improv training, I came out realizing that if my mommy issues came out on stage, it would make me human. It would make me relatable. The audience would love it. They would think it was fun. It wouldn't embarrass me. It might embarrass me for a moment, but that embarrassment to the benefit of the audience would be absolutely worth it. No one, you know how it is. What's the expression? If you realized how little people think about you, that people are just thinking about themselves, you wouldn't be as stressed out about your reputation or just being as nervous on stage. Yeah, I tease my wife. I say, if you ask women what they want in a man, they put humor at the top. And I'm a guy who's out here actively improving that on that skill to be a better mate, to be a better man.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad I brought that up. You went through that story. Let's take a minute, bring it back to finance though, because one of your mantras that I really love is what gets measured gets paid attention to, what gets rewarded gets done. What tech have you found most effective for building dashboards and data visualization tools with your clients to help them measure and pay attention to what matters and drive better business decisions?
Yeah, a lot of my clients are early stage, and so they're starting from scratch. And so the two essential techs in my industry are QuickBooks is number one, and it's terrible at what you just described, which is why we all have to use Excel as number two. So Excel is it's the standard in building charts and analyzing the output from QuickBooks. I teach my students that QuickBooks is accounting, it's the past. Those numbers are very real. And I help them. Part of the transformation of financial thinking is the math piece of it, or the what do we call it, is the statistics, just to understand that some numbers aren't that one plus one does not necessarily equal two when you move out of accounting and move into finance, because finance is the future. Accountants use QuickBooks, finance people use Excel. And so finance numbers have a standard deviation or a range. They're fuzzier numbers. We're trying to predict the future. And so understanding how the income statement and balance sheet flow together, or how, just yesterday, my client, I'm just showing them the simplest thing, that if you can't find something on your income statement, it might have accidentally gotten capitalized instead of expensed. So having this underlying understanding of what QuickBooks is kicking out. I've also worked with bookkeepers who are they're thrilled. They're, like I mentioned, the students who have a light bulb moment, and that's an addiction for teachers, is helping people get that light bulb moment. The addiction for bookkeepers is when they reconcile and those numbers line up. They get that perfect match of numbers and everything's lined up and neat and nice. And I just was telling her she's got to have the basic understanding of the finance so that you can understand what the software is doing. What QuickBooks does is, for finance people, is it gives them the accounting so that we can do the finance, and finance answers the question, like, what do you need, how are you going to pay for it, and how is it going, and it's measuring those things. But the human psychology piece is, which of those do I choose to look at? Can I get it into a chart or, and simplify it? I need to see things going up and to the right. And if they're not, then I need to make changes. That's incredibly useful with companies that have employees. You start handing that to hand over decisions to your employees, which is the only way a company can get out of having less than 20 employees. You mentioned a book that you like it, that 2x is harder than 10x. 10x is easier than
10x
2x.
is easier than 2x. Great
Yeah,
book.
and if you think about somebody who's 10xing, you're really letting other people make decisions, and you've got to give them, you got to set up their world where they're playing a game of moving these numbers up and down. And that's my passion is like, what are we showing the decision makers? And even with a solopreneur, it's just that one decision maker. What are we showing the CEO, or what are we showing financial decision makers so that they're playing the game to increase profits, increase cash flow, and keep the thing afloat? And don't let's try to avoid being profitable but running out of cash and actually going bankrupt, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely no shame in Excel. I would challenge that even hundreds of millions of dollars of companies still at some point boil down decisions to the data that they produce in Excel just because it's so familiar to everybody and so easy to adjust your decision making when you may have all of the systems and automation in the world, but when you need to do something with numbers, sometimes it's just easy to throw it into Excel. As you look to the future, what are some areas you're excited to explore or expand within the consulting practice within Gerwitz Consulting?
I'm just now leaning into agentic AI. You'll hear me say this phrase that I hate marketing. It's part of, I don't want to hate anything, but here we are. I find myself more attracted to Excel than I am to LinkedIn. Let's put it that way in terms of technology. And so if I can get an AI that can do the outreach in a way that makes it feel like authentic enough for me, that would be an excellent automation. That's something I'm looking forward to with technology. I've got my website, kurtgerwitz.com. I've got my LinkedIn, and I've gone to ChatGPT and said, give me a timeline for posts on LinkedIn so I can be consistent and get them all set up before I send them out. So I'm excited for technology to relieve my pain in marketing. That's the answer.
What tell us about some innovative strategies or some approaches that you're using to help separate yourself from your competition to help stay ahead in your industry?
I think I'm early stages in my industry. I'm using the old-fashioned human connection. I'm leaning in on to the authenticity piece. I want to meet face to face. I'm staying local. I'm not like outsourcing the work to somebody who's underneath me getting paid a lot less and won't take good care of the client. Yeah, and I'm leaning in on going professional public speaker. I want to reach more people. I want to help more people. It's my mission and purpose in life to do those things we talked about with the transformative power of financial thinking and to understand the way the world works. And so for technology piece of that, I use HubSpot, I use Asana, I use the Google Calendar, I use LinkedIn, and I'm on those all day long, every day. And of course, ChatGPT to just keep me sharp.
Great. What key skills, key qualities that you believe are essential for success when it comes to your space and helping your clients? How are you nurturing those key skills? What are they, and how are you keeping them current with your clients?
This is a great question. I'm learning from a failure I had recently. I fancy myself as a little bit of a financial therapist. People have reactions. People get weird around money, right? So some people have bad relationships with math or with money, or it's very personal. Personal finance is right up there with politics, things you're not supposed to talk about at Thanksgiving. But I'm creating that safe space. So I'm working on those, I'm going to call them therapy skills. Transformation happens in a space of understanding. So I'm looking at a lot of people who are not in finance, but they're in mental health. I'm looking at Dr. K on the YouTubes. He's one of my favorites. There's a lady named Heidi, and there's Therapy in a Nutshell. And I'm doing these to help myself be a better listener, a better connector. I strongly believe that ideas go best through true human connection. And actually, here's an example of that is I could put together easily a conversation. I could ask ChatGPT for a conversation between George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. These are two people I would love to talk to. I was a history major. That'd be a fun conversation. But I don't care. Like it's gonna be fake. I'm not actually interested in that at all. And it's curious to me that I'm not. And I think it's because of the reality of human connection. So I'm working on those human skills. Frankly, the finance stuff, the hard skill of finance is actually probably the easy part there.
So tell me about your goals as you continue to grow. It sounds like you're deep into the bootstrap grassroots level of getting this off the ground. What's one goal you're particularly excited about achieving in next year?
I'm going to hire my first personal assistant. So I'm a solopreneur. My goal is I teach my clients, it's one of my early modalities is to get your KPIs, your key performance indicators, get those narrowed down. So that's what we call that dashboard. When I use the metaphor of you're flying a plane and I really don't want you. I have a picture that I use of a Boeing 747, and it's got over 100, it's probably over 200 gauges, and it's too much for anybody's just starting out. So we say it's between 3 and 10 gauges, or in this case, KPIs. And if you don't know your KPIs, I tell people your first one is revenue and your second one's profit. And so my KPIs are actually in revenue. I've got a couple clients who are not paying me enough, and I need to leverage them into I need to leverage those relationships into a bigger engagement. I'm working the grow with you strategy, as I am with you, Bo. I know you're growing, and I'm here with you, growing with you. So I like that. So to answer your question, to sum it up, would be revenue, and then offload some of the work that's not my favorite thing to do.
Great. Look, it's been great talking to you, catching up, Kurt. For our listeners that want to learn more about your work, potentially collaborate with you, what's the best way for them to connect? How do you want them to reach out?
Primarily, let me say LinkedIn, and then I'm pushing my YouTube, and I'm K Gerwitz on everything. I'm K Gerwitz on the Instagram, Spotify, not Spotify. I'm not on Spotify. You're on Spotify, I think, Bo.
Yeah,
I'm on TikTok even. That's a new one for me. Facebook, but LinkedIn is the preferred one. I also have kurtgerwitz.com.
great. Really enjoyed it, Kurt. Take care. We'll see you soon.
All right, thank you, Bo.